us to be looking at discrimination, be looking at civil rights, be looking at what we can do as a community to support each other and stand in support of each other while all the whirlwind of language that's happening that's so disturbing, while that's going on over here, we want to find ways to support each other here in our community, in this place that you're sitting right now, and other places in Santa Barbara. So it's through education that we learn, and it's through education that we come to find that place where we can be supportive in a way that people need to and want to be supported. So I welcome all of you. I would like to thank our sponsors before we get into any more. We are grateful for any support that we can get. We don't have a lot of money, and we always can use donations to support events like this. So thank you to Center for Lifelong Learning. Thank you to Amy Batchelor and Sent from Heaven, Aaron Ritter, Advanced Choice Consulting, Dr. James Quacco, Joan Kershaw with Joan's Bread, Emiliano Campabello with Emiliano's Art and Design, and Tania Isaac, Joyful Yoga. So thanks to all of those people. The clip that we're going to see now is actually a trailer from a documentary from 2011. It's called Lives Worth Living, was the documentary with PBS Documentary. And this is the trailer.
There was a belief that if you had a disability, you didn't have any desire to live a life. You didn't have the goals and the dreams that somebody non-disabled had.
When people ask me how I got involved in this, I say, well, it was easy. I got committed to a mental hospital. And as soon as that happened to me, I had this very powerful conviction that something was fundamentally wrong.
And I think particularly at Willowbrook that we have a situation that borders on a snake pit.
It's the first really militant thing that disabled people have ever done. And we want people to listen to us.
We had a vision. We expected to change the world. We had a compelling need and we had a compelling story. You know, if you have a good story, it's not hard to get people to watch it or listen to it.
Let the shameful wall of exclusion finally come tumbling down.
Having been told for so long how powerless we were, and here we were with the President of the United States signing this document that was our Emancipation Proclamation.
And I especially appreciated what that woman said at the end. You know, just because you pass a piece of legislation, just because you have something on a piece of paper, doesn't mean that discrimination ends. It takes a long time, and we've come a long way, and there is some distance to go still.
Hi, my name is Jacob. Yes, work student, and before I get started, I'm going to ask for a favor. This is, if you don't understand me, please tell me and I'll repeat myself. My story is I'm a person with cerebral palsy, been in Santa Barbara for about 3 years, work as the Independent Living Resource Center. We serve people with all types of disabilities. I'm kind of the community organizer, so I deal with events in the community. I educate people around how to advocate for themselves, but I love my job. I love getting up every day in the morning. I don't get paid as well as I should with who does in the non-profit world. Again, as I volunteering my time, people don't expect me to have a job. Also, as in young men with a disability, it's extremely hard for me to find someone to date. I often get thought of as a person who's asexual and doesn't have romantic interest, which is completely untrue. Now as I'm getting older, I really want to find a relationship. So if you know anybody, I don't make much money, but I'm a good listener.
My name is Len Hoffman, and I've been thinking about my stuttering. With stuttering, it wasn't so much that people pushed me away, I pushed myself away. I was so afraid of going into speaking situations, I would avoid even having to say my name. I mean, you know, it's somebody says, "Hi, I'm Joe Smith, who are you?" And you stand there and you don't say anything. I mean, it was easier to hide. When I went to the university, I was evaluated, and one of the evaluators wrote that I would be a waste of a college education and I should go back to my hometown and get a job in a gas station. I didn't take the advice. And in the last half dozen years, somebody in my men's group who was a therapist said, "Let's work on it." He worked with me for about 6 months, and in essence, I stopped stuttering. You know, it took me 40 years to get to that place.
Mental illness is so prevalent. I think everyone in this room has been touched by mental illness, either your own or someone you know. And I think it's sad in our society. People are stigmatized. And when you think about stigma and you think, what does that mean? For us it means it's like a mark of disgrace. It sets a person apart. It makes them feel not part of the group. And in our society, the stigma against the mentally ill has been prevalent for a long time, dating back for as long as we have records of humans. They were treated badly, they were marginalized, and we've tried over the years to educate people, you know, to explain about mental illness, and you would think that the stigma would be decreased. And yet, over the past 40 years, research shows that it has not decreased. In fact, it's increased. And people wonder why that is, and a lot of research has been done to try to understand why is that. What they say from the research basically is that for the most part, people fear it. People fear that people with mental illness are violent, which is not true. There was a research paper that was shown that if you eliminated all the mental illness in the world, if we had some kind of magic wand that could eliminate all the mental illness in the world, that would decrease violence and violent crimes by 4%. So it's really not the mentally ill that are violent. In fact, mentally ill people are more likely to be victims of violence. But the stigma continues. And for them, it means often that they can't get housing, they can't get a job, They can't have all the things that they want. And like Jacob was saying, you must not, want to have a relationship. But that is not true. Another thing is that schizophrenia, which is a severe form of mental illness, is a very difficult disease to live with. It's disabling for many people. And yet these people with mental illness or with schizophrenia, 3 out of 4 will tell you that living with the stigma is as difficult as the symptoms themselves. That the symptoms they can manage because they've learned to live with them, but being judged by people is really more than they can bear.
Hello everybody. I'm hard of hearing, but I don't think you can tell because I can speak very well. I've had speech therapy, as I said, for roughly 12 years, and without that I probably wouldn't be speaking as I am, and I'm very thankful for that. My whole life, most of my childhood, I've been bouncing around through different public schools without an interpreter, and that was really hard, especially when the teacher turns around. She will talk, and she turns around, I don't get anything because I rely on seeing you, then hearing you. Mostly because I associate with the sound with the movement of your lips. If I hear the sound, but don't see your lips, it doesn't make sense at all. By the time I graduated high school, I went straight to work. I was in the Conservation Corps for 2 years, which was an amazing experience. But also in that experience, I have met people who are unaware and ignorant of deaf people and how we get access. And a lot of people that come up to me saying, you can't do this job. Like, why? Well, you can't hear anything that's going on. Well, does the job require you to hear everything? No. You have your hands, you have your feet, you have a body to move, and that's all you need. You don't have to hear everything. And there are also other people around you who will help you. That's what basically it helps. I'm not sad that I'm deaf. I am proud of being deaf. I'm very happy of who I am. I just really got into a new adventure for me. I decided to become a foster mom. And I really would like to foster deaf and hard of hearing children like me so that they can have a role model, someone to look up to that's like them and not being placed into a family that does not know sign. So that's one of my biggest goals right now. Thank you.
By a young man named Ben Myers, and he's probably in this TED Talk, he's probably about 18 years old. Amazing, amazing young man. I loved what I saw happening here. You were all just like interacting and connecting, and that's the perfect thing to have happening.
Hi, my name is Ben Myers. I was born with a rare birth defect called Mobius syndrome. I've been teaching disability advocacy for 7 years now. I learned something that day. People are itching to talk about disability, but they can't. And maybe they're doing it out of fear that they're going to offend someone. But this disability taboo, as I like to call it, is everywhere. It's everywhere. A very familiar situation to just about anyone with a visible disability is a little kid coming up and asking, hey, what's wrong? And the parent hastily rushing over saying, you can't say that, that's rude. But we are a very xenophobic race. We fear that which is foreign to us. So if we remain ignorant, if we can't talk about something, then we open ourselves up to fears and to prejudice and to misinformation. Remaining silent about disability is not helpful. It is detrimental. Of course, we already have some disability conversation out there already, but it is negative. When I say negative, I want to clarify. There's a difference between saying, oh, you have this disability, that means you have these difficulties, how can we be accommodating? That's a very rational, practical discussion. And then they're saying, oh, I'm so sorry you have these disabilities, oh, I'm so sorry, you're such an inspiration. When I say negative, that's what I'm talking about. That is not helpful. There's several ways in which we have these negative disability conversations. One is how often we use disabilities as insults. A few obvious ones come to mind, but what about some of the rarer ones to think about, the ones that come up in our day-to-day conversations? How often do you call something you don't like crazy, stupid, idiotic, insane? These are all slurs, and yet somehow we find that it is okay to say them. This is everywhere, and it doesn't help. We can fix this. All of us, everyone in this room, can do things to fix it. Let's not use words like disabled or handicapped or crippled. Let's use different words, words with neutral etymologies and neutral connotations. Let's come up with a word like physiodivergence. You joke, but the mental disability community is already starting to adopt the word neurodivergence. Let's do this. Let's take these disability slurs out of our conversation. Let's not use them as an insult, because disability is not an insult. Let's start talking more about disability. And why shouldn't we? According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are 57 million Americans living with disabilities. That's more than 2.5 times the population of Australia. The World Health Organization says that there are 1 billion people worldwide living with disability. That's more than 3 times the entire population of the United States. 3 times America that we are not talking about. Let's talk about this. Let's put disabled characters, a wide variety of them, in our kids' shows so that our kids grow up around disability and can be so much more tolerant and accepting and accommodating than we ever were. But most of all, what I want to leave you with is this. Let's start the disability conversation together. Thank you.
I am disabled, and I endured a lot of pain. And I still have problems with my back, but I have developed the skill of hiding my disability so that I have been one of those people that parked in a blue space and had the cops come and talk to me about whether I'm disabled or not. I was supposed to have a brilliant career as an academic researcher. That never happened because of my back disability, because of my mental disability. The combination cost me any chance of having a career. The price of that has been abject poverty. So these things are affecting people who can be profoundly disabled, and it's not visible. It's not something you can see.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Hoyne. I have cerebral palsy. I have dystonia. I have scoliosis. At the grocery store recently, one of someone's kids has one of their parents while are leaning to my right or to my left, and the parent said to the kid, "You can go up and ask me what's wrong with me." And the kid went back to the parent and just said, "You told me never talk to strangers." But the parent just said, "You can talk to this guy because he's not a stranger, and it's always nice to ask people with disabilities what's wrong with them." So I encourage people to have their kids ask people about their disabilities, because we all need to educate people with disabilities.
Two things we haven't really talked about is obesity and how disabling obesity is. I weighed 440 pounds at one point, and I was no longer intelligent, I was no longer educated, I was no longer brilliant. I was a disgust to look at. I was not sensitive, however, to obesity until I experienced it. The same as when I was in a wheelchair. When I was in a wheelchair and my children would pick me up from a nursing home on a Sunday morning to go to IHOP, navigating that wheelchair to the restaurant, people would be disgusted. And so discussions like this, I believe, are fundamental if we're going to get beyond the fear and get beyond the ignorance and to have compassion for ourselves.
I'm just wondering, because I know myself, I have this really weird thing that goes on when I'm approaching somebody who is differently abled, and because I'm usually really friendly and I usually make eye contact with people and smile and whatnot, and then and sometimes I don't know what to do. Do I look up? Do I look down? Do I look in the eyes? Do I look at the chest? Do I look at the heart? Do I breathe in?
All we need people to do is say, hello, how are you?
You were saying about that differently abled had another connotation to you.
Yeah, it means I'm different
Yes, so
than everybody else.
and that would mean I'm different than everybody else.
And it's kind of like sugar-coated.
It's kind of sugar-coating.
Does it need to be sugar-coated?
And it doesn't need to be sugar-coated.
In the world today, we have a new disability happening that you might not be as aware of. And unfortunately, it's happening with hundreds of thousands of children and adults. And it's affecting their childhood dramatically if they have sleep apnea. It's happening so much in the violence in adults because they literally are not getting enough oxygen to survive on. So it's an interesting concept that I'd be happy to talk to more of you about, but it really has to do with so much of what we're talking about and things that are happening in the world today and a lot of the things that people are experiencing.
My organization runs a kind of social group for people who identify as any type of disability. It's every 2 Thursdays from 1 to 3, well, from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, and we hang out and talk about our lives. And if you're interested in joining the group, please contact me and I'll give you more information.
We'll circle back to talk about it, ask about it. And is that okay to, and from your experience, to ask?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just encouraging people that your biggest learning lesson could be someone's big healing experience.
Right. And to speak up. Just to ask the question. Just say what's on your mind. Say what's on your heart. Always being respectful. Always being compassionate. Always doing it as a way of wanting to connect with other people and know them. But say something.
The judgments that we pass on each other are really awful. And we could make things a lot easier by just accepting people the way they are and saying, you're having a hard time. Can I help you? You want to talk or whatever. So some of the other things that we have written down here, we can volunteer at the mental wellness center. I think we can volunteer at the center that you work at. Yes, there are paid people like him, like Jacob. Yes, and then there are volunteers. So we can do that. We can figure out where the need is and go there.
We can get educated. We can go to events like this and get educated and learn things. I know I've learned a lot tonight. Learn the language. That's what the handout is all about. Learn the language of disabilities and how can we say this differently, and how can we be more supportive and more respectful to each other. Know what's going on in your local government. There are areas that are not quite up to par still with disabilities. There are still things that need to be done. The woman in that one clip said, you know, well, just because we have a piece of paper that says blah, 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 this is the law now, doesn't mean that that's actually what's happening. So find out what local government is doing and maybe become an advocate in that way. Plug into what's going on. Find out what events are happening and show up. The one way that we can be an effective force for good in the world is to show up at events like this and share our stories and share our strength. Some of the other things that we have on our list here is to join an organization or a demonstration. Like that demonstration at the Capitol, would it have not been an amazing experience to have been there, to experience that? Wow, imagine that, imagine that. And there's always power in getting together with a whole group of people. So watch and listen if something is happening. Again, show up. Don't be a silent partner. Don't be the invisible force of good in the world, right? Make yourself visible, make yourself heard. Help someone. Be a voice for someone who doesn't have a voice. Go outside your comfort zone and make new friends. Go hang out with Jacob. Yeah. And the last one is to love and be kind to others. And that, of course, is the bottom line.
That was actually one of the comments I was going to make, was about going outside your comfort zone. I thought, you know, if there's something concrete, maybe each one of us, you know, could make a commitment that in the next 7 days, I'm going to go outside my comfort zone and talk to somebody that I wouldn't normally talk to. And don't do it by yourself. Do it with a friend. Like, make sure that you're doing it in front of somebody to set a good example, and then maybe they might do the same thing.
I'd like to add to that, if you meet a deaf person, I know there's a language barrier, but there's also other ways that you can communicate. There's writing on paper. You can use your cell phone, text messaging, using gestures, hand gestures, trying to talk. If you know somebody that knows sign language, you can also try and practice signing.
So we're at the end of our evening. This has been wonderful, and I'm so grateful to all of you panelists who showed up tonight. What a great job you did. Our next in our series on prejudice will be in September. I think it's September 15th. And we are going to talk about sexism. Be there. Change the conversation. Exactly.